Hi guys, this is Master McKinney from MT Performance. Today we're going to talk a bit about how to perfect your glute functionality in your running mechanics. So let's start talking a bit about running biomechanics. What's really going on when you're running is this alternating shift of a hip flexion and a hip extension. That's the primary function that's going on in the lower body. So the better a flexibility that we have in our strides, and a better power we have in our strides, the better a runner we actually are. What we tend to overlook here is that whenever the hip is being extended, the glute must be fully activated. If not, the glute is fully activated in your hip extension, there might be a dysfunction here. One of the main dysfunctions that we tend to see is that when the glute is not being fully activated in your hip extension, it might be due to a hyperextension in your lumbar spine. So the lumbar spine really doing this, inhibiting any functionality from your glute. So if the primary unconscious action from the body whenever the hip is being extended is for the lumbar spine to do this, to extend as well, we might find ourselves in a problematic situation here where you would like to reactivate and learn a new pattern in your glutes. I recall having the same problem once. So I went to a therapist, told him that I lacked some glute activation and I had some pain in my glutes, and his answer to me were just to do some more hip thrusters. And that's really describing the current standpoint in this field pretty excellent. It was just like that was a standard answer that he just gave to all his clients. Like it was something that he was told once, and then he really never thought about why he gave that advice. He just did it because that was what he was told. Hip thrusters won't fix your lack of glute activation in running. There's simply not enough similarities between a hip thruster and your running mechanics to say that it can fix your glute activation. Yet your butt will probably grow bigger from doing hip thrusters and probably also stronger in that particular exercise. To get transferable results, there must be to some extent similarities between the exercise that you do and the skill set that you want to improve. So when we want to improve our glute activity in running, we must consider that whenever we are doing this hip extension, the opposite side will do a hip flexion. So if we take this analogy, when our hip is being flexed here, it means that the posterior side of the flexed hip is activated. At the same time, the anterior side of the flexed hip is activated. So we're doing this alternating movement all the time, anterior side being activated, posterior side being activated. So if we want to improve our glute activity, we will have to exercise the other side as well. So in the corrective exercise, you will need a floor. You lay down on your elbows, you lay down on your knees, and with your toes in touch with the ground. Then the first thing you want to find is a back that is completely flat. So to flatten this back out and have a stable spine and a stable core, we will start by engaging the rectus spinae here. Right now my pelvis is anteriorly tilted. I need to get away from that pattern, so I posteriorly tilt this and once again try and flatten out my spine. This is very complex, especially if you don't have a mirror. So excuse me for that part. Then what we do is press one knee to the ground while extending the other hip and holding this position. Maybe with a slight knee flexion on your extended hip. And this is very hard. If it's not hard, you're not doing it correct. I used to say that if you can do this for more than 10 seconds, you don't do it correctly. It's very important that you try to keep these different patterns in order for you to activate your glute on one side while activating the anterior side of the other leg. So this is why you're pressing your knee down on one leg to activate the hip flexor area on one leg, the one that you're going to flex in front of the body, while you're activating your glute on the opposite side, and flexing the knee is causing a bit of an activation on the same hamstring here. And the reason why we have to keep this flat spine is of course because that we need to keep the alignment from the cervical spine to the thoracic spine to the lumbar spine and keep a tense core while we have this lower body activation. Also, the reason why we don't anteriorly tilt our pelvis is to get away from this pattern where we tend to hyperextend our lumbar spine and remove the focus from our glute. So that's why we posteriorly tilt it, so we automatically activate our glutes and will help the activation in the extension phase. The last part here is on the extension side, the leg that you extend, you will have to make sure that you don't laterally tilt your pelvis. This is the same when we're running in the extension phase. We don't want any lateral tilt when we are extending. So we want to be so stable and so strong around the core and pelvis that we don't tilt either anteriorly or laterally when we are moving forward. So think before you perform. Move intentionally, think independently. Bye.